Hi, everyone. My name is Taylor Maag. I am a Senior Policy Manager at JFS, and today I'll be presenting on closing the credit and non-credit divide, ways we can bridge the gap in post-secondary education to expand opportunities for today's students. During this presentation, we're going to start out with some student stories, review some of the background of why JFF worked on this report, elevate some of our findings from the research, highlight states that are doing really innovative and promising practices, and lastly, discuss some of the policy considerations that were developed for the future. So to start us off, I think it's really important to start with some student stories to remember why we're all doing this work and to remember how students are navigating our post-secondary systems. So we have a few examples here related to kind of this non-credit credit articulation. So first, I'm going to start off with Jarek. Jarek was a high school graduate from Lahaina Luna in Maui. When he finished high school, he was not so sure about college. He participated in the summer program that Maui has that allows 100% of his tuition to be sponsored for non-credit courses in a specific in-demand field. Jarek was interested in construction, so he was able to enroll in the construction program through the summer. He had 80 hours of training and earned a non-credit certificate. After his confidence was brought up and he realized all the skills he learned, he wanted to then pursue college. When he entered in his fall semester, Jarek was able to pursue college with 5 credits from his non-credit experience, which was really great because he was able to bring that experience through his credit degree in construction. The next example is Anna. So Anna is 28. She has 2 children. She's a bank teller in a really rural community in the South. She realized that she wanted to earn more and reach a higher position, so was thinking about getting her associate's degree. But with a full-time job, 2 children, and no college degree, she was a little skeptical. She researched her local community college and realized that they had stackable certificate programs that would lead to an associate's degree in financial services. These were short-term, highly focused certificate programs, and they also were offered online, which was really great for Anna because the community college was 2 hours away. In 2 years, Anna earned 4 short-term non-credit credentials. As she earned those credentials, she was able to earn a higher wage at her job, and then she was able to use the credit from those courses to complete her associate's degree fully online in just 3 semesters. And lastly, we have Celia, which is a great example for credit for prior learning. Celia worked in a long-term care facility for 12 years. After 6 of those years, she realized she wanted to earn a little more money and really express her expertise to her boss and coworkers. So she took a course and exam and became a clinical medical assistant. After those 6 years with the increased responsibility and administrative tasks, she realized she wanted to advance even further and get her associate's degree in healthcare management. Her local community college offered competency-based education programs in healthcare management. And she was able to work with her career navigation counselor to enroll in the courses and use her 12 years of experience and her in-demand credential to get her prior learning assessment completed. She completed this assessment, which was a college-level exam, and also found out the college accepted her certificate for credit. This helped Celia accelerate her learning and reduce costs because she was able to bring 15 credits toward her degree program. So I think the student stories really help to lay out the background just to show that there are successes in this work and people starting in the non-credit side of the house and moving towards the credit side and progressing on their degree. Before we move any further, a little more background on this report. So I am part of JFS policy team, and most of us are here in DC. And in DC, we were working with our congressional partners, people who work on these issues on the Hill, and they were really interested and also confused about this distinction between non-credit and credit. They were like, why is this happening? Why does this exist? How are students struggling? Why can't we just fix this? And what does the federal government need to do to make this better? And so we at JFF were like, those are really great questions, and we should probably look into this more. So this prompted us to really dive into this issue and create this report. And I want to just make one thing clear. As we're talking about non-credit today, we're thinking about non-credit workforce-oriented programs, not the non-credit programs that are in developmental education or English as second language courses. These are really focused on those workforce-specific courses in post-secondary ed. So with that, a little more background to talk about today. Of course, the economy. And even right now, amidst this health crisis, all of these disruptions are just even stronger than they were before. But as we all know, more jobs are going to require new skills to keep up with the technological changes at hand. And more people are going to have to turn to post-secondary education to train and upskill and reskill to boost their career prospects. It's also important that we remember who our students are that we're serving. Post-secondary students are now older, they're more diverse with increased barriers, like having dependents or already working. They have little time or money to spend on skill development, yet they can't find good jobs without those necessary skills. And I want to flag a recent report that was done by the Center of Education and Workforce coming out of Georgetown University, is that students now are wanting a post-secondary pathway that ends in a job. And that's being seen with certificate programs and associate's degree programs actually paralleling the numbers of enrollment for bachelor degree programs. So as we think about this issue, think about what students are asking for from their post-secondary education as well. And then lastly, as these students enter post-secondary education, there are an array of options for them to choose from. Some are for credit, some are non-credit, but unfortunately, this distinction is often misunderstood. So non-credit can sometimes be more attractive for today's students, especially if we're thinking about people that really want this rapid skilling to get that job right away. However, workforce programs are rarely eligible for financial aid, or especially federal financial aid, because they meet different course requirements. And so that means that they don't necessarily transfer to credit, which can be a problem down the road. So with that background, want to elevate some of the major findings we found from the research. So quickly going through the key differences between for credit and non-credit, and I want to just put a little asterisk on this slide that this is not always the case, but generally these are the characteristics on these sides of the house. So for credit, these programs are really intended to result in a degree, so associates or bachelors or a professional credential. These programs are eligible for federal financial aid, such as Pell Grants, as long as the student meets eligibility requirements. For credit courses often require prerequisites, so entry exams or evidence of prior knowledge. They offer a wide variety of general education, occupational courses, and elective courses. So that's something really important to remember, that for credit is really this idea of generally educating to get those employability skills developed for students, so like problem solving, teamwork, adaptability, where the non-credit is really this concrete, discrete skill set. Credit programs are also measured in credit hours. So for example, associate's degree programs typically require at least 60 credits or 4 to 5 semesters for full-time enrollment. And programs can be accredited by regional industry-led accrediting bodies, though many are not. On the non-credit side, we found that the majority of non-credit courses are intended to result in short-term certificates that are industry recognized or any other occupational credential. They're not eligible for federal financial aid unless they are woven into a for-credit program. They usually do not require prerequisite courses or entry exams or basic skill sets, so sometimes that does make it easier for individuals who need those skills immediately to enroll pretty quickly. They focus mainly on the specific competencies that are necessary for a specific job or employment. So again, really specified technical skills rather than this general skill development. They're measured in seat time, so they do look at the hours students are required to attend class, but this varies greatly. You can have a non-credit course that is a boot camp that's 2 weeks long, and you can also have a non-credit course that's up to 6 months. But generally, they are always completed in less than a year. And programs are not accredited. So they are not, although the educational institution that does offer the programs may be accredited and often is accredited. So what are the drivers of this distinction? So that was really great that we were able to kind of see these general characteristics between the two, but how come that exists in today's world? So these are kind of, well, each institution has a unique program development approval process. These are some of the common factors that we found influence the decision making. So the first was at the speed programs can be approved. Often the training provider can't wait for accreditation, the accreditation process to to finish because often accreditation processes can be 9 to 12 months long. So if you need a fast program that's in response to your local economy, the non-credit route is just easier to develop and get approved at a faster rate and just get students enrolled. The other factor is the depth of the employer needs. So as these training providers are becoming more and more connected and thinking specifically about colleges, more and more connected to their local employers, if there's a large skill gap in a specific industry and employers need help, they need help fast. And they, again, can't wait for the process of credit approval. And so often they want to work with colleges and community colleges to develop a quick few-month program to get them the workers they need fast. And then lastly, another common factor is whether the program aligns to an existing degree program. We found that non-credit programs that already align to an existing degree program are a lot easier to get that approval from faculty and their institution. However, if it's a new program that hasn't yet been articulated into credit, it's a lot more difficult to get faculty and staff buy-in. There are also systemic factors at play here that go kind of beyond the institutional choice and process, but they do influence it. So thinking about funding, that's obviously a huge one. So funding, of course, varies by state, which then makes tuition costs for students vary. Some colleges or training providers receive revenue from employers, which might be for non-credit courses, so they might be incentivized to provide more of those types of programs. However, some receive state funding based on their credit side of the house. So if they're receiving money for one program or another, they're going to be more likely to provide what they're getting money for. The next thing is staffing obligations. On the non-credit side, staffing it kind of enables you to hire adjunct or part-time professors, and you don't need to think about tenure. So that could be a pro. But on the other side, a lot of colleges receive funding on numbers of full-time faculty. So courses for credit might be incentivized as a way to increase funding. The other thing is policy incentives. This does make a huge play as federal and state policy that's enacted. Financial aid is based on currently degree pathways and credit programs. So that really is pushing money into those types of courses. However, there's also money through our workforce development system and also through some of our higher education acts that really prioritizes sector initiatives, which is building this workforce training division, communication with employers to respond to the economy, and that could also build this non-credit side of the house. And lastly, the elements of accreditation. Accreditation thinks about the faculty qualifications, the curriculum requirements, and of course, time in the classroom. And so this definitely makes colleges think about how they're determining credit versus non-credit based on what is going to be accredited. And I think something we need to think about here is what are we measuring as quality in our post-secondary system? So really quick, I think this is a fun slide because it just kind of talks about the myths that are out there and the perceptions that exist in the field and then the truth. I think a lot of us in the field realize that these are myths and misperceptions, but also realize that these are common and some barriers that we might face when we discuss with our partners. So thinking about non-credit programs aren't high quality because they aren't accredited. As we know, many workforce programs still undergo extensive institutional accreditation processes. They also have to meet faculty standards and achieve certain benchmarks that are prioritized by employers. So there's still this piece of quality, it just looks a little different. Non-credit programs aren't as rigorous as credit programs. Although they tend to be shorter in length, they still require students to adhere to rigorous course of study so they are able and prepared to start their work. Non-credit programs are more affordable than credit programs. This is often what we think is the case, but technically it's not true. Since many aren't eligible for federal financial aid, many low-income students find their only option for affordable education is a degree program. Short-term credentials can provide on-ramps to good jobs, but they're usually not eligible for federal financial aid, which is kind of putting different types of people in the track. And last myth is non-credit education isn't as important to colleges as credit education. Again, this is very dependent and this varies greatly, but it really depends on this local skill need and how non-credit education is funded within the state. Non-credit education may be a lucrative source of income for community college and is a crucial talent hub for the region. However, for us to the biggest issue at hand here and for us to get past all of this, unsure thinking and distinction is measuring quality. Right now, we award credit for non-credit learning, emphasizing common accreditation measures, so thinking about seat time, academic rigor, and faculty qualification. However, workforce-oriented programs tend to focus more on employer need, industry growth in the region, and job placement, retention, and wage gains of the student. So really thinking about those employment outcomes. Quality is essential to kind of change these perceptions around the non-credit side of the house, but it also is important that we ensure quality, so we aren't just giving students these certificates that won't get them what they need in the labor market. So how are we measuring, and what are the standards we should be measuring is kind of the big question. So if you all have time, I would really recommend reading this report from the National Skills Coalition, Expanding Opportunities Defining Quality Non-Degree Credentials for States. And they have this quote that I think really summarizes what we would all want to see in post-secondary coursework quality. So a quality non-degree credential provides individuals with the means to equitably achieve their informed employment and educational goals. So when people do receive this credential, you're not just stuck in one job, you have the opportunity to kind of progress across employment and progress in your educational pathway. The other thing that they mentioned in this report, which I really liked, was thinking about other metrics of quality, and these are some ideas that they had. So the substantial job opportunities associated with the credentials, the transparent evidence of competencies mastered, so really thinking about competency-based education and measuring competencies rather than just time in the classroom. Evidence of post-secondary outcomes, thinking about employment and earnings as a part of that as well. And then lastly, if able, kind of this idea of stackability, so you're able to take your credentials earned and stack them to progress in your job or your education and training. But the largest barrier to quality, and for us to inform what should be quality, is data. I feel like many of us see this every day. But because non-credit workforce programs are not usually applicable for federal financial aid, they don't have the same reporting requirements. So because of that, it is really, really difficult to collect robust data across employment and wages and to see this return of investment of the program. The other thing that it's really difficult to see is who are the students actually entering into this program, so we can get a better idea of the need and who's actually accessing these services and programs. So this hinders informed decision-making and efforts to seamlessly connect non-credit and credit, because without the data, we can't inform the quality, which then still creates this misperception across the credit and non-credit tracks. However, as I was being bleak, there is some data out there. So there are some positives here. So Achieving the Dream in 2008 wrote reports and resources on non-credit to credit pathway programs that they were doing in their Northeast Resiliency Consortium. This consortium made up of 7 community colleges in the Northeast, and they were all community colleges that were tax-free grantees. From this program, they realized the data. They got some data from this, and they compared non-credit to credit pathway programs, so those that started in non-credit but then progressed along their degree pathway, versus non-credit but then just stopped out. The pathway students, as you would expect, continued to 4-credit programs at almost double the rate, and they were more likely to gain employment and remain employed for 9 months after exit. The other thing I want to really elevate here is that one of the reasons of the success was the folks on the pathways programs were able to receive comprehensive counseling supports that helped them progress along their pathway. And they also used articulation strategies like prior learning assessments. So people's past experiences and work were able to contribute to their credit along their pathway. As I mentioned before, though, this lack of data really is hard for us to realize who are the students accessing these programs. Again, as we said, this whole presentation, it varies greatly across states and localities. But again, this depends really greatly on the regional demographics, the local labor market, and non-credit funding. For example, in Virginia, Louisiana, and Kentucky, they're seeing the majority of their non-credit students as middle-aged to older white men who have been displaced from their work because of large economies declining, for example, like coal. And they have the resources to go back and reskill and upskill to find new work in their region. However, when we look through our research at places like Southern California or even in the Northeast Resiliency Consortium, we were seeing students being women from ages 25 to 30, and they were kind of fit this description of our today's students. They were majority had dependents and were working part-time while they were receiving the education and training services. However, with that being said, and those two differentiating populations, generally workforce development students that are entering into non-credit courses do follow trends of post-secondary students. So they are getting older, they are more diverse, and they are having increased barriers. Like I mentioned, dependents are already working and have to navigate that landscape of learning skills while also already having responsibilities. There's also this motivation to obtain these discrete skills to help them with career progression in the short term. And just below is a quote from one of our partners, JFS partners, Monty Sullivan, who's a president at Louisiana Career and Technical College System. So with that being said, I know it's kind of been a lot about the facts and the information that we found, but I do want to, end on a really positive note and talk about the states that are doing really great work in helping their students navigate the system. So first, I'm going to start off with Virginia. So Virginia's community college system in 2016, I think it was, started the Fast Forward program. This program was a really innovative approach to funding short-term education programs, helping students complete training and then earn a credential in an in-demand field. It's a pay-for-success model, so it ensures equity and also they're seeing great outcomes. 1/3 is paid by the student, 1/3 is paid by the community college, and 1/3 is paid by the state. However, if the student meets certain eligibility, income eligibility requirements, they get their tuition is waived by the state and they get a scholarship. And so what Fast Forward is seeing is they're actually, because of the ability to offer aid, they're actually seeing their students be primarily folks that are receiving TANF or SNAP benefits. And so they're really serving those that are most in need of these skill development opportunities. Additionally, they're seeing really great outcomes. They're seeing 95% completion of training, 65% of credential attainment, which is higher than the national average, and they're seeing 20 to 50% wage gain. I also just want to flag for the Fast Forward program, if you guys are at all in touch with some federal policy that's been being developed and argued about for the past year, the Jobs Act, which would expand Pell eligibility to short-term programs, was basically written using the Fast Forward model as their guide. The second thing I want to flag about Virginia is Northern Virginia's career coaches. So Northern Virginia is one of the largest community countries in our nation, and it is right across the DC border. What they have at their community college is career coaches specific to each in-demand industry that's in their region. And for example, I'm using IT now because Amazon campus is coming there soon. And so they have an IT career coach that works to really translate and articulate credit from the non-credit to credit side of the house so people can progress on their pathway, especially in something like IT, where there are these really short-term certificates that individuals can get, but you want to make sure they don't stop out there and really progress so they can earn higher wages and higher positions in their employment. Next is North Carolina. This is a really great example and hopefully a motivating example if you all can get state support. So North Carolina's governor last year realized that they had huge workforce skill shortages across the state, that employers were screaming at them to help and they didn't have the people skilled for the employers to hire. Because of this, the governor was like, okay, I'm going to use our community college system as our skills development hub, and we are going to get the employers the talent they need, and we are going to provide parity funding for credit and non-credit courses. So now colleges get the same amount of money for the credit side of the house and their non-credit side of the house, which also obviously incentivizes certain behavior, as we talked about before, because if you get money for something, you're more likely to do it. Also, because of that acknowledgement, the state system created transfer standards. So the state office created transfer standards from non-credit to credit articulation, but also from 2-year to 4-year transfer standards. And because all 58 colleges were receiving funding, it wasn't just guidance from the state. This was really like, this is what's going to happen. And so they're seeing, although it's still new, they're really seeing all 58 colleges adapt plans to make sure these transfer and articulations are more seamless for students. And lastly, Hawai'i. So Hawai'i has been doing really, really great things in leveraging resources. So not just getting one funding source and using it, but thinking about how to blend and braid funding. So they leverage their community college system and federal and state dollars to create this employment trading fund. And through the fund, they offer 50% discounts for non-credit courses. Right now, this 50% is just for incumbent workers. So these are folks that are either working currently that need to get reskilled or upskilled to remain relevant in their job, or there's people that have been recently displaced that need just, some new skills to be more attractive in the labor market. They also have funding through Career Hawai'i Ways, which is foundation funding, but it's college and career pathways for high school students. And as part of it, it provides 100% of tuition costs for career and technical training programs that are in demand industries in Hawaii. Lastly, they have Native Hawaiian career and technical education grants, and this pools funding from industry, nonprofits, and donations. And it's really about rapid response training program that funds tuition, internships, and industry certification. So we'll pay for people to take, tests to get certified for, again, high wage, high demand careers on the island. So they're really doing a great job on finding those available resources to help individuals get started on their educational pathway and learn the skills they need to succeed in their regional labor market. So with all that being said, there are implications for policy, of course. And so in our report, we kind of started to consider what the policy recommendations would be for federal and state legislators. Just quickly to remember, I think it's important, the levels of policy. So of course, we have our federal and national policy, our state policy, we have city, but then also local institutional. So even at a college, there can be college institutional policy. So it's important to remember how this all looks as it trickles down. I think the main goal here, what we were thinking about it, is what if policy ensured there were no more false divides between education and skill development? So these are some of the considerations we came up with. Improving data transparency in systems. As you can see in the presentation, this is a huge gap in non-credit coursework, and we think it is important to understand the needs of students and then also student outcomes so we can better improve systems and connectivity. Make financial aid more accessible and innovative, but ensuring proper guardrails for quality assurance. As we think about expanding Pell or other financial aid options, that's really great, but we want to ensure quality is there. Again, like I mentioned earlier, we don't want students to just get that first credential and then get that first job and then never come back and progress. We don't want people to ever be stuck in low-wage jobs that don't have room for progression. And so how do we ensure students will come back and those credentials can be stackable so they can really earn a family-sustaining wage? We want to re-examine accreditation requirements. I think it's, we had this quality discussion. I think it's important to kind of re-examine what we're determining as quality in accreditation. Is it really the time someone's in a classroom, or is it the skills and competencies that they are developing while they're in the classroom? So I think, that's something that we should reconsider and be innovative in thinking about. It's important to better align post-secondary programs with evolving labor market needs. And I think even as we think about college and career pathways, even aligning secondary, coursework as well. But this is really important so that when students do decide to, end their pathway for the time being, they're able to get something out of it when they try to enter the labor market. And lastly, it's really important to promote and elevate examples from across the country where proven strategies for designing effective non-credit to credit pathways have been taken to scale. And so I think those states are a great first step, but I think we need to do that at a broader scale. So thank you all so much for listening. Really want to just advocate for checking out this report. It's on JFF's website. And we're happy to answer any other questions you have in regards to the report or the presentation. And I look forward to hearing from you all. Thank you.